SBC World Series. John Moonlight, debut back in 0809.
Through the legs pass from Big Johnny Moonlight. Moonlight! John Moonlight! Listen to the crowd!
Welcome back to the Canadian Ruck. As you might have guessed from our little intro there, we have National Player 7's phenom, John Moonlight, on the podcast today. I had a chat with John a little while ago. Fine bloke of a lad. Good stories and real passion for the game, and he's moved on to firefighting right now. So before we get there, just remember, anytime you want to reach out and contact us if you have questions or thoughts or just want to discuss the game, I'm on Twitter at Canadian Ruck, Instagram _Canadian_Ruck, Facebook at the Canadian Ruck, and email the CanadianRuck@gmail.com. And always, you can watch us on YouTube. You can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Google, and CastBox. But make sure when you do that you follow and subscribe. You see that picture there if you're watching on YouTube. That is Ginge, who won one of the Canadian Ruck hats. We have 2 left. So feel free to reach out with some queries and maybe get your name drawn for a hat. So it's been an interesting week in some rugby news. There's been some different things that have been coming up. One small thing here with Rugby Canada is we're moving away from Canterbury as our kit, and we've gone with the Italian company called Macron. They will be supplying Rugby Canada with their playing kits from now on for the foreseeable future. I don't know how long the contract was signed for, but that will take effect shortly. And also with Rugby Canada, you're probably well aware there's been a return to committee that has been created to try and figure out when and how play can resume happening. There's been some weird stories online about Europe's trying to restart the rugby, going with no non-contested scrums or not even having a scrum, to things like that. And there's also some articles out there saying that rugby with coronavirus is safer than basketball because there's an offside line as opposed to, man-to-man in each other's face. But we'll see how things shakes down, and I think everybody's excited to see some New Zealand brand Super Rugby starting up on June 13th. Best of luck to Ardron and everybody else down there that are getting in game shape. There was an interesting thing that just popped up over the last few hours from World Rugby, is that a proposal has been put forward basically for an impromptu Rugby World Cup in 2021, in June and July of 2021. The claim is that they could raise roughly $500 million for the game, which would be tremendous, even though it would be less than 2 years since the 2019 Rugby World Cup when this would be played. It will garner a lot of attention. It would garner a lot of money. It would be played strictly in the UK and Ireland. And yes, it was the brainchild of an English chap. But it's kind of an interesting idea. And with that happening, obviously the Lions tour to South Africa would need to be postponed if this went forward. But it is a great way to spread money. And as I said, it'd be June, July 2021. Strangely, though, there would only be 16 teams invited instead of the standard 20. And this would give 31 matches. And the winner would be deemed the Coronavirus Cup of World Rugby is what they would call it. And I guess a couple of things that strike is, one is that the Southern Hemisphere has yet to comment or give their thoughts as if they want to do this. I can't see them saying no, just because it would be quite lucrative for each of those countries. But I'm obviously not privy to what their thought process is. And the other thing that's a little, I guess, disappointing, we're lowering the amount of teams by 4. You bring in 16, and the money that is raised is only going to those 16 nations. So again, you've got those top 10 teams, the rich are getting richer. Where Canada's ranked, I think, 23rd right now, we're probably not getting invited. And that could be very harmful for us, because we would be missing out on a nice chunk of change that could help invest in rugby in the future of Canada. I'm not sure what the play-in scenarios would be and how that would happen, or if it just goes by who finished top 16 in the 2019 Rugby World Cup. The article on Rugby Pass didn't say, but it would be disappointing if we didn't get in, since we've, as a country, have been in every World Cup since they started in 1987, and it would be a shame if we miss this one due to some semantics or I guess politicking, that it's just certain clubs, the exclusive clubs, get in. So hopefully, if this goes forward, they find a way to broaden a little bit, and maybe have those top 20 teams go, and Canada gets a chance to play in it. And who knows? I mean, if there's mini tournaments to get there, maybe Canada does strike it rich and get one of those top 16 spots. So here's hoping that is the case if that happens. That kind of ties in a little bit with this pod's version of the gray area. And I actually want to talk about the Lions Tour. And it's supposed to be happening in the summer of 2021. And then the Lions Tour will be going down to South Africa. And I absolutely love the Lions Tour. I think it's one of the top events in rugby and in all of sport. These tours are special. When you talk to guests that have been on the show and you hear them talk about the aspect of tours and how much they can bring a club together and how much it helps teams bond and it shows the love of the game, they're actually, it's amazing. And the Lions Tour would be the most famous. And a tour in South Africa, which is a rugby hotbed, they obviously just won the World Cup here, a year and a half ago. It does wonders for the game. But I do have some issues with the Lions Tour that I've just been thinking about recently. Obviously, the Lions Tour, you've got, your Ireland, your England, your Scotland, and your Wales, and then you've got the host nation, so South Africa, so you have 5 clubs. All money from the tour raised goes to those 5 clubs, those 5 nations. Makes sense, but it kind of doesn't, because it shuts down pretty much international play anywhere with regards to those 5 nations. And that can be frustrating. As it is, Canada and US are staged to host England in July of 2021. And it's the first time England has toured the United States and Canada since 2001. So for 20 years, we haven't seen them. But because it's a Lions year, there's a good chance we're going to be missing Owen Farrell, no Itoje, no George, no Nas, no Sinclair, Underhill, Ford, May, Tuliagi, or Ben Youngs. And because of that, it's like we're getting a B-side. We're not getting a true English A-side. How are we supposed to grow our game? How are we supposed to get better if we're just getting kind of the second tier version of what England has, because they're, our top players are off to the Lions Tour. Let's just, put a group together and send them to Canada and to the US. And there's no shame for our Canadian boys that will be playing. I think it'll still be a great challenge, but you want to tee up, you want to look across and see those top guys lined up against you to weigh yourself, to measure yourself. And that won't happen. And it's very frustrating. So if these Lions Tours continue to happen, it's got nothing to do with World Rugby. And Sir Bill Beaumont actually said on a podcast recently that, we have no say. The Lions Tour is a complete their own entity, and they do what they want, and they, make it happen. The frustrating part is, by saying that, you're allowing them to dictate what they do and to basically monopolize a full month or more of prime rugby season, prime rugby time for other nations, because you're taking 5 countries out of play, and then they're hoarding the money, and the rich, again, continue to get richer. So when these tours happen, why not spread the game? Why not spread the money out a little bit? Why not spread the wealth a little bit? Maybe because England is supposed to be coming to Canada, maybe, and you're sending your B side over. Why not use some of the money that you're gaining from the Lions Tour to help strengthen Canada and the US in the same time? Or why not have the Lions Tour come to Canada and come to the US and do some warm-ups here? That would be cool. I mean, I'm sure you could fill out a stadium in BC or Ontario. I mean, you definitely could in the Maritimes. It wouldn't be a large venue. But I imagine if you could somehow get some of those, get some Lions warm-up games here before they head down to South Africa, that would be pretty enticing and pretty lucrative for America's rugby. The other thing I've been thinking about, and I kind of briefly mentioned this on another pod, is why not an America's tour? We've got Canada, US, Argentina, and Uruguay. And between those four nations, you could form a pretty formidable squad. And from there, you could actually look at, maybe we're going over to the UK and let's start a Lions tour where, every 4 years we head over to England and we play a series of games in England or France or wherever. And I think it'd be a great starting point. Sure, it would be difficult to get set up, but I think once it gets set up, it could be a tremendous opportunity for our Canadian lads and our American brothers and our Argentinian brothers and our Uruguayan brothers to take part in something like that and grow the game in the Americas. It would be really interesting to see, and I think it could start a really cool tradition. Much like the Lions, and I think do nothing but help rugby over on this side of the pond, as you would get to play with the best players in your side and go up against some quality and star players on the other side. So maybe that's something to think about if you're running Rugby Canada or running US and you happen to be listening to this. Maybe somebody wants to dig in and see what the semantics are and the logistics are to do a tour like that, because it could be pretty impressive. Coming up next, I had the pleasure recently of chatting with John Moonlight. Watching sevens, he was always one of my favorite players. The way he ran with the ball, how aggressive he was, fierce tackler. He seemed to be in the mix of everything, even when he was playing 15, the same thing. In two different games, absolutely. Hard to train for one while you're playing for the other, and he talks about that a little bit. But when John retired, he was Canada's leading capped player with 65 touring caps with the Sevens club, scoring 116 tries at sevens. And with that, it was 580 points. Very impressive numbers for John. He was a member of the 2015 Rugby World Cup that went to England. Enjoyed his time there, and currently he's back in Ontario and he's a firefighter. And we talk about that because I've noticed as I speak to some of these guys that there are lots of retired rugby players that go on to firefighting. Chauncey O'Toole, DTHs, and John actually talks about it. And there's a few others. So without further ado, we're going to get John on. But if you can hear the music in the background, it's the song "Dancing in the Moonlight." John's gonna tell you about that story, which is a pretty good one and very entertaining. So John's coming up next. I hope you enjoy the pod, and we'll catch you after the interview. Cheers. All right, so if you haven't guessed it by now, we have John Moonlight on, and John played a number of years on the 7 circuits with Canada. He also played 15s with Canada. John, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, cheers. It's awesome. Awesome to be on here. As I'd said, I've been listening kind of right from the start when you first had Cole on there and Chance and everyone. So it's been good. It's great to hear the voice of some of the guys, players, and people in Rugby Canada out there.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun chatting with you and the other guys and some of the girls for sure. So let's jump right in here. How, and I guess why did you jump into rugby? Why did you start rugby? How did that happen?
So I never really had my eyes on rugby or anything. My cousin David played many years with the 7s and a few 15s caps. He's the actual reason I started playing. Going to my grade 9 high school, he basically convinced me that this was a sport for me. I went out there, I'd absolutely love it. And this was right when he was kind of on the cusp of all the Canada stuff. And then I started seeing him on the TV because they were playing tournaments on Sundays. And I really kind of got into it. So yeah, kind of without him, I never would have played the sport, followed his footsteps, I guess.
So that's pretty good. So when was that? Like, where was it? Talk to us about, I guess, was that high school? Was that university? When did it all begin?
Yeah, so that was grade 9, actually. Dave and I grew up, we were very close, our families. So we had cottages near Bob Cajun, our first cottages, and our parents both got new ones. But we were across. Bob
Cajun's a real spot from the Tragically Hip Zone?
Oh, yeah.
I've never looked into that. All right.
They've got they posted a few concerts in Bob Cajun.
Awesome.
And I think one of their last concerts, don't quote me on this, I think it was one of their last concerts was actually there.
That's pretty cool.
Out in the fields up there. Yeah, so we grew up with the cottage right across the cove from each other. Our dads are brothers, and I could swim from my dock over to the dock of their place and vice versa. And so we spent weekends together, and we kind of grew up together. And then obviously Dave's 8 years older than me. He kind of didn't quite come up, I guess, as much at the same time as I would, or he'd be coming with his buddies and doing some things that maybe I wouldn't be getting up to, a young gun. But we grew up together, and yeah, Dave and I have always been close. And I guess it was grade 9 coming into that. Dave was out playing. I don't know if he was in the Pacific Pride yet or not, but he was on the cusp of all that stuff. I can't remember the exact dates now, but he was the guy who basically pushed and pushed and pushed for me to go out. And just told me to kind of try it and told me to research it. And my first rugby practice, I went out there and go out there and they start splitting everything up into forwards, backs, and they send me over to the backs. And at this point, I've been reading online what every player does, and they go, flanker.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Flanker, he's making all the tackles, he's doing everything, he's got to do this. I'm like, that's the guy I want him. So they go to send me over to play in the backs, and right away I'm like, no, I'm going to be a flanker. That's what I'm. So I self-chose, put myself over there, and I guess that's kind of how I ended up being a flanker in the end.
So grade 9, first practice, you're telling the coaches what to do.
Not far off. I just kind of told them where I thought I should be. You know, I laughed. I talked to some of those coaches here and there. They're all parts of like the Ajax Wanderers, my rugby club, or like Oshawa, all that stuff. And you see, the rugby community is so small. You know, Ontario is a big place, but everyone in rugby seems to know each other. And so you go somewhere, you always seem to know someone. So those guys are involved there too.
Absolutely, that's pretty good. That's a good intro story. All right, so let's fast forward then. So I think if I read correctly, you're the all-time caps leader for sevens rugby, or you were when you retired, and you scored, I think, 116 tries during sevens rugby. Is that right?
Yeah, so I played 65 tournaments, I think, on the seventh circuit, and then 116 tries. Nate has passed me now, I believe. Justin's passed me in tries also. I mean, the guys now, they're so like those guys are. Nate's been around since before I even started playing, right? And Justin's an unreal finisher. And that, so
Nate's fun to watch for sure.
It was fun. I think the only thing I even hold over those guys now is I think I've got one of the higher constant tournaments. I think I played like 53 or 54 tournaments straight.
That's impressive.
It's kind of a cool thing. But yeah, I mean, I never played for any of that stuff. I played because I love the game. I love competing. I love being able to go to the field and know that I was going to be better than the guy across from me and represent our country.
Absolutely. So, well, talk about that. Talk about, like, you played a lot of sevens. You also played at the 2015 World Cup for the 15s aside. I guess talk to us about the how those two games are so different. I mean, they're rugby, but they're completely different games, aren't they?
Yeah. So I guess I should kind of give my whole story of rugby and where I'll start from. Even with, like, I got cut from Ontario the first few times I went out there. So I went out when I was in grade 11, or say grade 10, grade 11 got cut from Ontario. Grade 12 wasn't going to go out, and I got mentioned by a guy, Paul Conley. I'm sure most people would know that name around Ontario. He coached the U19 team, coached Oxford School against us. Came up to me after and said, "You should really go out for Ontario." And I gave him kind of that smart-ass remark. Well, I went out there. You guys never picked me, so why would I show up again? And he told me, "No, you should go out. Listen, I work with Rugby Canada, with the U19s, go out there." So I went out, played with ended up getting selected for Ontario, went to the Canada Summer Games, and then ended up actually getting selected. I went to Laurier for 2 years. I got selected for the was U19 trial camp down in Arizona or something.
Yep, that's where they still have it.
Yeah, back when it was U19, now it's the U20s and that.
Yeah.
So got selected for the full team to go to Dubai, so I played in the U19 stuff. And then come U21 selection time, I didn't get a selection. And this is where Dave comes in again. Dave kind of said to me, "Hey, listen, you should really come out west. I think you got a shot with rugby." And this time I wasn't really playing sevens or anything. I was just playing 15s. I thought of myself as a 15s player. So I said, "Okay, I'll make the trip." So I transferred out west. Went to UVic under the tutelage of Doug Tate, great coach out there and great guy, general. And I struggled through some injuries and that, broken hands. I broke my leg in there a little bit. And I finally got myself into the national radar. And it wasn't until 2009 I played my first sevens tournament. The only reason I went to a sevens trial, back then they hosted trials, it was an open trial, so coaches would suggest guys, was Doug Tate. I never saw myself as a sevens player. Doug told me I should go out for this trial, and so I went out. And this was That was just before when the 2009 World Cup sevens, which was in, I think it was Dubai. There was a lot of big names out there. My cousin was still kind of involved in it all. Rob McDowell was out there. I'm trying to think, there's like Mensa Croker, all those guys are kind of still around. And I actually ended up putting up one of the better fitness scores, one of the better speed scores. And that was kind of the first time I realized, oh, maybe I could play this game. And so I ended up going on a 7th trip later in the year after the World Cup and went straight to the Churchill Cup.
I missed the Churchill Cup.
Yeah, so that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun
York
to watch.
University and that. I got called in, actually, it was just before that. Canada was playing Wales, and Smacky was still playing for the team. He was nursing an injury, so they called me 2 days before they were playing Wales and said, we might need a back row to be on the bench. Can you fly in? And this is right when I was getting over a hand injury. I said, yeah, no problem. Flew me into Toronto. I show up. I'm all excited. I get there the morning of the game. Like, I get picked up by the LO, taken straight to the field to go through like a little pre-game thing with the guys. And I know a few of the guys. I trained with a few guys, but didn't really know everyone. Thrown in to warm up with the team. And Smacky was still running around, and he was fine. So he ended up going and playing. I got undressed, sat in the stands, and then I got invited to the Churchill Cup. So I played in the Churchill Cup, got my first cap against Georgia, and I didn't play another 15s game until 2013.
4 years later?
4 years, yeah. So it was. I wasn't really. I think I was kind of on the cusp. I guess always. I wasn't really selected. I was kind of there, and I really had to battle to get myself involved. I finally got myself a full-time position on that 7 squad kind of by the end of 2010. When 2010, 2011 kind of, I think, when Garrett came in, because Morgan was there for a while, and I really earned a spot in that. And then I had to fight. I finally got myself, 2013, in November, I got myself back into it. And that was when it was really tough for guys, because they had us playing both 7s and 15s at the time. And you know, looking back now, I wanted to play all the rugby and I wanted to represent Canada. I always wanted to be at that 15s, at that 7s. I look back now and how my body felt all the time, and it was tough, because I go from playing in, you know, that November test window where I'm trying to put on weight, I'm trying to weigh at, like, you know, kind of 200 and 230, 235, and then I still think it's light for a back row, and then trying to go back to 7s where I want to be like 220 to 225. So I was just beating my body up in that. But I did it because I loved the game and I wanted to represent Canada. I think it was kind of some of my better years of rugby and enjoyment in that. Leading into it was 2015 when I was still doing that. I think I was only home like 110 days a year or something like that, between the World Cup, the Pan Am Games, all the 7s stuff, and that. It was a crazy year.
So how tricky is that? Because the 2015 was the World Cup and it was in England. And like you said, you get the Pan Am Games, you get the World Cup, you're also running the 7s. I mean, you talked about trying to have your weight for 15s at 235, but you're trying to be around 220 for the 7s. You know, it's a 14-minute game as opposed to 80, different dynamics that you have to look at. How taxing is that on you? Like playing both basically at the same time?
Yeah, there's just no time to recover. I can remember we were in Portugal, because we were going away. We were playing Portugal in a game. I think what was it? I think it was the 3rd game of the November series, and the whole 7s crew had flown over, because we were going right from Portugal. We were flying into that first tournament in Dubai, and I remember I ended up hurting my ankle in that game in Portugal, and I went and I played in the 7s tournament, but I can remember sitting there going like, man, like there's no time for me to recover at all. The 7s tournament at that point had turned to where you were kind of home 2 weeks, away 2 weeks, home 2 weeks, kind of come after January. So I basically had kind of 3-4 weeks of time off at Christmas, but you know, 2 of that was training that, and then it was right back into the swing of things. You know, it's tough on a guy to be able to bounce back. I think there's a lot of great skills in the 7s that can be put onto the 15s field. Look at some great guys that have come through. You know, Matt Evans played a bit of 7s with us, not right from the start, but Andrew Coe, you know, he shone in 7s, and his skill levels jumped, his tackling, all that stuff. has gotten so much better since he played sevens going over. You know, I can see there's a correlation between the two, but it's too tough for a guy to go back and forth right now.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's you got to focus on one or the other. I agree. I don't think your body can really do both and be healthy for the amount of time it needs to be healthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was the 2015 World Cup like for you?
That was 2015 World Cup was an awesome experience. There was obviously a lot of disappointment with how we had finished and how all that had gone. And there was, I wouldn't say we had the best team culture at the time. Like, we had some great players coming through, great guys all playing in there, but there was a lot of rifts going on because the sevens guys were making us think about trying to get themselves sorted. We had the pro guys, and then we had the guys that were kind of stuck in between, the guys that were some really good domestic players, but they didn't have a group, right, of guys and support. And, I think we did a good job of coming together and that, but team culture is such a big thing, and I think it leads to so much more on the field. And, looking back, Crowley tried his best to bring it together, but I think that's where we kind of missed some mark, and that's why we ended up losing games. Like, we lost I can't remember who we were playing now. Was it Romania or whatever in the last 10 minutes of the game, we were losing that. That's the kind of stuff I wish we could have gotten right. I always tell everyone I hate losing more than I love winning. Like, I just, competing wise, I just hate it. And that one kind of stung for me, because I think we could have done a better job as a team to get ourselves right and get ourselves all together on the same page, and it would have given us. We were in some of that Italy game. We should have had that one. The guys, I wasn't playing in France, the France game. The guys played a heck of a game out there too, right?
Yeah,
we had our shots. The World Cup is such an unreal experience, though. They take care of you. You're basically waited on hand and foot. Anything you need or anything you want, it's available to you. Your cleats break, they got someone that's going to come and get you a set of cleats sorted like that. It was awesome.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often just in Canada, right? So take it when you can.
No.
So you mentioned team culture. That wasn't a question I was going to ask, but it's something as a coach and past player, it's something I really look on. Like, from your perspective, played at the highest level possible for Canada, who drives that team culture? Is the coach define his roles and then the players buy in, or is it the players that kind of do their own thing? How's the best team culture has been set up for you?
See, I've been in a few different team environments where you have different ways. I think it's got to be a buy-in from everyone and everyone together, including the coach. Now, looking at the sevens, I've had a few different coaches now. Like, under Damien McGrath, we had some of our best results, some of the best stuff, and I had probably the best time playing rugby with all the guys because we all bought in on it together, right? And maybe it was having a common enemy at the time. Like, Rugby Canada seemed to be kind of pushing us around a little bit, and so maybe that was a bit more drive, and that's what kind of brought us together. And then you look back and we had Liam Middleton, and it was like that was a really tough time for me because he was very, I'd say, more dictatorship, like not dictatorship, but the way he wanted things was how things were going to happen. At the time I was captain of the team, he put me in a very awkward position a lot of times with the players and stuff, almost as if I was having to be like his enforcer and stuff. And I really didn't like it. And I spent a lot of time behind closed doors trying to talk to him about, like basically pushing back and stuff. There was at one point he said to me he didn't want anyone drinking a single drop of alcohol ever on, ever, like at all leading the Olympic year. And it was stuff like that. And I really struggled with a bunch of that
For
stuff.
a whole
Liam's
year?
a good guy. Yeah, he didn't want, like, leading into the year, he didn't want any guys. And I said, guys got to be able to relax. And there was a lot of stuff pushed back. So I think the best setup for team culture is having the coach and the players all buying in on something and working for that common goal. Yeah.
What do you do with the players that, if there's like one or two outliers that aren't buying in, what happens then?
Well, like with our team, we always had a good group of guys, but then I'm referring to the seven stuff here now. Like near the end there, leadership group of Harry, Nate, and I, we worked really well together with kind of going through stuff. And we never really had any big problems, any of that stuff. I think I developed as I went through. I know when I was first in the leadership role, I struggled with that and talking, the way I was maybe talking to players about. I can remember Connor Braid and I kind of, going back and forth a little bit about stuff, but that's part of it, and that's part of growing, and you learn, maybe not how to tell people what to do, but ways you guys can talk in a productive manner.
Yeah.
On the field was always on the field, and off the field was completely separate. And that was something that I think good team culture means. You need to be able to be critical to each other on the field, and then off the field things be okay. And we had that near the end there. It was good.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's that you make a great point. If you need to be able to be honest with your teammates on and off the field, but it's got to be a way that's productive, so you're not burning bridges, or you can actually move forward together, right? So I think that's what you're talking about with Connor Braid. Probably is falls along the lines with that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're both strong personalities. Connor's a good buddy of mine too, right? And I was just, rather than how I just didn't approach it properly. And everything's about, how you talk to people. Everyone grows up in different backgrounds. You're in national teams with guys all the way from Newfoundland, all the way to Victoria, right? And you have that different background. You grew up differently, and how speaking with one person works might not work with another. And you have to be able to cognizant of that, ensure that you're taking care of that. And I definitely think I grew as a leader, and that stuff was kind of left near the end. And it was awesome when we had that leadership group of Nate, Harry, and I, because there's a lot of stuff, that we could depend on each other. One guy wasn't always having to worry about making sure he's getting everyone hyped up, because another guy would be there, and everyone brought their own kind of segment to it, which was worth it.
Yeah, if you have the great leadership, good leadership core, absolutely, those things can fall into place nicely.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're gonna switch gears. We're gonna do this little segment I call Quick Fire. I've got about 10 to 12 just little questions, and do your best, to keep it to one word or 2 or 3 words. A couple of guys have lingered on, and that's absolutely fine if it adds to it, but it's kind of just to get a better glimpse into you as the person more than anything.
Yeah, I heard D was struggling a little bit with some answers.
Yeah. All right, so first one, best team you ever faced?
Oh, best team I ever faced would have been the Maori All Blacks.
Best player you ever faced?
Phil Mack.
Phil Mack. All right. Where was that? Because you played together for Canada, but where did you guys square off against each other?
I was playing for James Bay. He was playing for UVic.
Okay.
Philly was one of those guys, like, he could be an absolute game changer for you, right? And, like, we were playing against Philly, and things that guy could do.
He's a wicked little scrum half, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Toughest player you ever faced?
Frankie Horn.
Best match you were a part of?
That's easy. The winning in 2017 over the U.S.
Anytime over the U.S., right?
Well, yeah, we won the title in Singapore, right? That was the best thing in any match I've ever been a part of. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, chips or cookies?
Ooh, this is a tough one because it depends on the day, but right now I'd say cookies.
What kind of cookies?
Well, I got some Costco ones sitting on my counter right now, so it might be those.
Okay. French fries or onion rings?
French fries.
7s or 15s?
Depends on the day.
Favorite venue for a 7s tourney?
I'm going to have to say BMO Field in Toronto.
Really?
Yeah. We played the Pan Am games there. It was awesome. It's a cool setup. Right
awesome.
Close behind is Vancouver, obviously, too.
Yeah. All right. Favorite beer?
Coors Banquet right now.
What's a guilty pleasure?
Chicken wings.
Chicken wings. Spicy, mild, honey garlic?
Always hot.
Hot. Nice.
The odd time lemon pepper.
Yeah, those are good too. All right. Best place for a beer after a match?
Anywhere with the boys.
That's usually what it comes down to. Very few people will say a pub. It's mostly, in the dressing room with the guys afterwards or somebody's backyard afterwards. So that's good.
Yeah, one of my favorites was we were in Fiji for like a development trip. This is when I was really like new, and like with like Neil Meachin, Philly Mack. There's a bunch of Tyson DeGoody was in there too, and we were sitting at the back of our hotel. We just looked out in the water in Fiji and that because everything was in Suva because we were in Suva Sevens. Sitting having a few beers after that was one of my favorites.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool for sure. All right, what series are you binge watching right now?
I just finished Waco. So
Is that good?
Down in Texas. I got a bit of Ozark going on right now. The MJ series, obviously.
Yeah, I hear that one's pretty good. I got to get into that one for sure.
Oh, it's well worth it.
Yeah. Favorite movie?
No Strings Attached.
Is that a rom-com?
Oh yeah, Ashton Kutcher. Yeah, it's a good one.
Sounds good. I was chatting with Connor Trainer yesterday, and he was rattling off, I don't know how many different rom-coms. I had no clue what they were.
Oh yeah, I definitely sat with C-Train. I watched a few of those over the years.
All right. Who would play you in the Netflix movie of your life?
Well, it depends on who you ask, because I'll get Ivan Drago, or other people said Gary Busey. So, God, I don't know, something like that.
All right. Who would play the leading lady?
The leading lady. Oh, geez. I don't even see. I'm bad with the actresses' names and actors' names. So let's just go with Katy Perry, because she was my growing up. I was always into her.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And last quickfire one: who had the biggest impact on you as a player? I think I know who it is.
It's definitely my cousin.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I owe a lot of my career to him, and we might be living on the other side of the country now, but I was talking to him yesterday when I was sitting at work and that, and we shoot messages back and forth. And without him, I wouldn't be here. So yeah.
Absolutely. That's great. All right, got a few questions left.
Alrighty.
So the next one: what are your thoughts on what makes a great team player, and who are some of those guys you shared the pitch with? You've rattled off a bunch of names, which is awesome. But what makes a great team player?
For me, it's a guy that's willing to do anything that he can for the team. Someone who believes in what your team goals are, and that, whether it's winning a serious tournament, beating a team in the World Cup. It's a guy who believes in that, and they're willing to do everything and anything they can to do it. I based a lot of my career off of hard work, and I think the best players are the ones that aren't ever going to give up on anything. I don't think I really got anything easily handed to me. I had to work hard to get myself involved in the teams, get to where I am, and keep myself at that level for years. And I think the best team players are the guys that are willing to do whatever they can to do that.
I agree. Who are some of those names? Well, who comes to mind? Who are 2 or 3 names that come to mind? Those guys that have that never die attitude, or they show the grit all the time.
Nate. Nate's one of those guys up there. Philly Mack was one of those guys. Philly, man, that guy put everything in every game he ever played. I'm trying to think of guys like Braid's, another one that's big and up in there. Hammond, that guy plays way above his weight class in the sevens world, and that. Honestly, I could probably list 3/4 of my teammates they're kind of at that level now. But, those would be the guys that popped to my mind right away.
Fair enough. I suppose if you make it, as far as a national team, that's probably one of those traits that you have, right? Like you don't quit.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you got to work through whatever adversities you deal with, and kind of when the times get tough, the guys you can see it in the change room when the stress starts building. That the guys that are ready and they're there and they're ready to work. You can see it in their eyes.
Yeah. All right. So you spoke a little bit about Andrew. You had a broken leg, a broken hand. World Rugby is trying to push that. Rugby is a safer sport than a lot. As far as I can see, World Rugby is probably the leading sport model for concussion management. But what would you say to parents that are scared to let their kid play because they think rugby's violent, or, my kid's going to go to the NHL, so I don't want him risking getting hurt playing rugby and stuff like that? What would you say to those parents if they were asking you about it?
I'd tell them to come out and just watch a game. My injuries were attributed basically to, being a young guy, drinking all the time, and a poor diet.
Right.
no one breaks the same bone in their hand 3 times in a row over 9 months without something else being on there. So I tell these parents to come out, watch a game, and actually witness it. There's such a beauty to the sport. You know, there's some big collisions at times, but everything's in a safe manner. You know, you're taught right from when you're this high that, you know, you have to put your shoulders into a guy and tackle, and you don't put your head in front of their knees and stuff. The safety's built up in there. I'd also mention that myself, I played every sport I ever could when I was growing up, much like a lot of the top athletes. You know, you're talking about the Michael Jordan thing. You know, he was playing baseball and basketball at the same time, and then he finally, as he got older, he decided on what he was going to do, and that was going to be his final. There's so many little skills and attributes that you can develop through other sports that, you know, not only pay off in life, but they'll pay off in the sport that you could be playing. I think we all thought we were going to be NHL stars when we were growing up. I wasn't quite as good at hockey as like Chance or any of those guys, but you know, I still thought I was going to the show.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you listened, but I had Brad May on a few pods ago, and
yeah, I heard that one actually.
19 years in the NHL. He played, you know, a lot of rugby growing up as well. So it's in Gretzky. I mean, he played lacrosse, baseball, hockey, and it's a head scratcher for me, I guess, as a coach of rugby, and I've coached hockey for a number of years in baseball. Why parents shy away, but I like that. Just come watch some rugby, and you know, I like doing that when I'm coaching. That's one thing I like about coaching rugby is that I walk the sidelines and I interact with fans. So it'll be parents from the other team that don't understand the game, and you can actually explain what's going on, and they're like, "Oh, cool." But you don't see that in hockey or football or basketball and things like that. So it's one of the other reasons that I hold rugby a little higher than other sports for sure.
It's such a family-oriented thing, you know. I remember growing up with the club. You come to the club, I'm playing there. There's parents while we're on the field, you know, going through our training. They're up there socializing, having a drink. You know, you come out on a Saturday and you got games from all the way from like 10 a.m. all the way through to the, you know, you got your senior men playing. Like the families are there the whole day. And it's just such a good, tight-knit atmosphere. And it's a fun thing to be a part of.
Absolutely. Connor Trainer was saying yesterday, one of the reasons he loves rugby so much is there's no assholes in rugby. You might get the odd one, but compared to other sports, there isn't any. Everybody seems to get along.
They get weeded out, right?
Yeah.
Because of that culture and the way it is. I can think of guys in clubs that show up and they realize it's not for them because, you know, we might go on the field and play hard, but we're going to go upstairs. We're all going to sit down. We're going to have a beer and say something happened out in the field. We'll talk about it after.
Yeah.
You know, say Chauncey and Jeb one day in training. I'm sure you heard about that. The two of them going at it. And, you know, they were fine 15 minutes later. And that's the kind of the culture it is in that because everyone's intense. But, you know, it's a fun environment.
It's just those two New Brunswick boys, you know, getting it out of their system, right?
Yeah, that was awesome to see. That was right when I first got involved, too. So I was a young guy walking that all.
Walking into that.
Yeah.
It's funny because I had Chauncey on first, and he didn't mention that story, but Jeb brought it up pretty quick.
Oh, that's because Jebby got his face filled in a few times by Chauncey, the old hockey guy coming back out. You can probably still find it on YouTube. I think it's called The O'Tooling of Jeb.
I think you're right. I think I might find that clip and put it on for the intro of this, if that's all right too.
That'd be awesome.
All right, so got a couple left here for you, John. So this one I find kind of neat. You're a firefighter, and it seems like a lot of retired rugby players go into that. Like Chauncey's a firefighter, GTH, who just announced his retirement from Glasgow. He's training to be a firefighter. What's the draw? Is it the camaraderie of the guys at the station, like, or is it just by coincidence that, you know, some of you guys have gone into firefighting?
I think it's the team atmosphere. You go from that one team atmosphere to another. And you just fit in seamlessly. So I worked for the city of Pickering, where I was from. I was born in Scarborough, but where I grew up. Oliver Atkinson, ex-Canadian player, also works for Pickering. He's on my shift. Actually, I was on the truck with him last night. And Jake Webster, another guy who played sevens for Canada. He's also working for Pickering. There's a lot of rugby people that are involved. Morgan Williams, Pat Dunkley out west. Nate Hirayama's got all his fire stuff done. Same with Lucas Hammond. It's just the transfer over. Neil Meechan, Tony Lacard, another guy with Western. They're all, I can list probably, I'd say half the guys that I can think of that have played Canada that are involved somehow in the RFA puck, because you go from that team atmosphere where you're competing, you're working for something with a group, and you're right back into it. You know, you're still joking around with guys, sitting at the coffee table, having coffee, shooting the shit, and then the bell goes off. You go do whatever you have to do. You come back, and it's the same thing. And that's the. It's like you're going onto the rugby field, right? You go in there and you don't know what you're going to deal with, but you're going to come out better from on the other end, and you're going to work together with those guys to get the job done.
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting atmosphere for sure. There's a lot of similarities, I guess, with the, you know, battling on the field to battling a fire with your friends and your mates and stuff. So that's pretty cool. So lastly for me, I heard this great story. I listened to this podcast called the Rugby Pod out of Europe, and there was just a little segment. It didn't go into detail, so I'm hoping you can explain it a little bit more. From what I gathered, it was the Monaco Sevens, and this guy Mick McGrath saw you. I think he might have had a few into him, but there's like, you know, dignitaries there and Monaco royalty and stuff. And every time he walked by you, he started singing "Dancing in the Moonlight" at this function. Do you remember that?
Oh, we all remember Mick McGrath. I don't know who was talking on the podcast. Was it Philly or someone? Or?
I don't know who it was. It was like a segment of another podcast that they were talking about. And when I heard it, I was awesome. Like, that's cool.
So it was in Monaco, the after event. So Spain had won that qualifier. So that was kind of the end of our Olympic dreams and that. So we were at the event, and the Irish were there. And this guy, Mick McGrath, like, I'll never forget the guy's name because he kept saying to me, "You don't even know who I am," blah, blah, blah. He was so drunk. He was singing "Dancing in the Moonlight," and he was yelling "Moonlight" every. And oh man, like the boys didn't let go of that one for a while, and then obviously they started moving towards making their way to the World Series. So we started seeing them on trips. So guys were kind of talking about that. Yeah, that was he was having a good time, that guy.
Did it ever happen on like during a game? Did anybody ever sing to that during a match, or was it just there?
No, it's just there. I mean, there was a few times I think they panned out to the moon or something during games, or you know, the song would come on like on the thing, but not a whole lot. When my cousin was playing Dave, it used to be like Danskin was in the centers, so it was Danskin to Moonlight. So there was like one call, it was like Danskin to Moonlight, Moonlight to Danskin, Danskin to Moonlight, Moonlight into score, and they're dancing in the moonlight, something along those lines. Like, it was just ridiculous.
That's awesome. All right, well, anything last from you? Any last thoughts or any stories you want to do? I mean, if you want to throw an old teammate under the bus or something, feel free, and I'll try and get them on later or something to rebuttal. But
the only thing for me is like just looking at the outlook of rugby in Canada after the quarantine and all that stuff. I think we really got to start trying to invest in kind of the lower levels. A lot of money's going to kind of the upper end of it all, and we're starting to see where we're not getting the development at the bottom. I'd love to see a situation where, say, you know, someone comes out and most players nowadays, if they don't have someone involved in a rugby club, like family member or something, they don't start rugby until they're in, let's say, grade 7 through to 9, depending on where you are in the province or in the country. Why don't we have someone going out and coaching all these coaches on what they have, what they teach? So we get someone, say we train 3 people, one in the Pacific, one in the middle, and one out in Atlantic. And each one of them gets taught how Rugby Canada wants, let's say, 5 skills. So like tackling, passing, defensive alignment, running lines, or anything like rucking, any of that. And let's go out and let's train all these coaches with those 5 skills. So we say we have, I'm just thinking around here, so we have like the Durham District School Board, the Toronto District School Board. We have a day where this person goes and talks at each one of these and teaches all the coaches in that on one of their Pro D days. This is how we want all of our athletes to learn how to do it. So we have a standard across the board. So every athlete's learning a certain way, so that by the time they come to that provincial level and that national level, they already have this base skill. Similar
to what they do in New Zealand.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I just feel like it would be, we have the people out there, like there's past Canadian athletes like myself or anyone all the way across Canada that we could put involved in this stuff, and then you're involving alumni in it, and we could try and help grow at that lower level. Because just through the little bit of stuff I've been doing when I've been back, and, you see the different skill levels and different ways people are teaching stuff, how we want them to receive a ball, or how we want to pass. We want them passing off their outside leg up, or do we want it back? Like, it's different all the way across. I've had different coaches tell me different things. So we need to find that Canadian way we want to do it, and get that info out there at the lowest level. When these these players, men and women, young boys and girls, are first starting the sport, they're learning it the way that we want to see it Canadian rugby, so they can have that base all the way up. So we're not changing skills and getting learned skills at the provincial and international level.
Everybody have the basics the same, and then as you develop higher, then you're learning the different intricacies of those set pieces or what have you. But at least everybody knows how to catch and pass properly, and not catch it with their chest. They can have their hands out so they're able to move it quicker, what have you, right?
We worked with Damien McGrath. I worked with him for a couple of years, and he was very, very big on, Jersey came down. He was very, very big on the core skills, like even how you hold the ball, wrapping those thumbs around the ball, right? Having 2 points of contact all the time. Just little stuff like that. If we can get that at a lower level and teach that, it's going to be so beneficial to rugby in Canada.
Absolutely. I know, as I mentioned earlier, I run a rookie rugby program, and obviously it didn't happen this year because of COVID, but we have kids age 4 to 12, and it's all non-contact. So the little 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, it's basically how to hold the ball, let's run, and what a try is, and it's a lot of fun. And the older they get, it's catching properly, passing properly. And then we were going to start a under 14 program this year with contact. They took tackling out of the middle schools here in New Brunswick. So it's brutal. So a few of the local programs said, well, let's start under 14 and we'll introduce tackling. We'll do sevens tackling. But the insurance, like last year, I paid $350 insurance, and that covered all 60 kids for 8 weeks, 2 jamborees and everything.
Yeah.
And now it's going to be over $3,000 for the same thing. It's ridiculous.
And that's what I'd love to see, is the cost of rugby coming down. And when I first started, one of the selling features that the clubs used to say is, well, come on out. All you need is an out guard and you're good to go.
Absolutely.
It didn't cost much now, but with the fees of insurance and all that stuff coming up, I'd love to see some of that money from the top come down and make it cheaper for families. There's a lot of great athletes that probably didn't, haven't gotten a chance. I can remember guys when I was coming through the Ontario stuff that, there was, they just couldn't afford to go to that next level. For me to go to Arizona, I was fortunate enough for my parents to pay it, but it was only like a 5 or 6 day trip, and it was like $2 and a bit grand or something.
Jeez.
It's just so much money in these kids. All the age grade stuff. I think the U20s are covered now, but everything for that and playing club rugby and that, it's too expensive. It shouldn't be that. I know the insurance isn't that expensive, but we can get some of the money from the top covering that for kids. We'll get more people interested, and people can afford it. Especially with all this going on.
Absolutely. And with us, it was, the kids only paid $40 for all they were getting. Plus they would get a jersey, a ball, a water bottle, and fruit after every match. So, you develop that culture where we're going to sit and have a banana and some strawberries together, or whatever, kind of like a post-match beer, but it's fruit because they're kids. But Rugby New Brunswick, at least, it's, they want everything to run through them for numbers, but that's part of the insurance issue. Like, part of the insurance goes to the union as opposed to the other way. So it is frustrating, but I think I found a workaround. I found a different insurance company. It would save us, $500 to $1,000, but because of COVID, we weren't able to run a program this year. So, but I agree. Like, if there's a way money could filter down instead of filter up, you need to develop those grassroots. You need to develop middle school and high school, so that you can have stronger teams, not look at grassroots to fund national programs. But that's just my humble opinion.
It is nice too, now that there is the Arrows. There's something, for the longest time with the 15s, the pinnacle kind of is the World Cup, right? And it's every 4 years. So it's, kids kind of forget about that, and they don't have that goal, something to work towards. But at least with this Arrows now in Canada, that kids have something to aspire and work towards, which is awesome. The guys at Toronto are wicked. I know, as you know, I played there for a season with them.
Yeah.
Can't speak any more highly of like Bill Webb and the stuff that he's doing for rugby in Canada and what he's trying to present. And that just gives those kids something to work towards. Because for a while there was a lot of people asking like, why would a kid want to play 15s if there's nothing to aspire to? Well, now they have something to aspire to and a direct pathway to go through the academy there and get themselves involved.
Absolutely. It'd be nice if Canada could get another two or three clubs there, but I'm not sure if that'll happen anytime soon. But yeah, I had Bill on a while ago. He's man, that guy's passionate. He was awesome to speak to.
Yeah. Well, I hear the MLR might be getting a team in Hawaii here now, so maybe I'll be throwing my hand back in there so I can get a little trip down.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Maybe I'll see if they need an assistant coach for something out there.
There you go.
Yeah. Anyway, John, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you, and I wish you nothing but the best. And hopefully, you guys are staying safe out there and keeping everybody safe fighting the fires.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for having me. I appreciate it, and we'll chat soon.
Cheers. Big thanks to Johnny Moonlight. Great guest, great conversation. Just a fun all-around guy. Big thanks going out to him too. He's a firefighter during the pandemic, so he's definitely an essential worker, and he's earning his pay and swag back in Ontario. So John, thanks very much. Definitely love to have you back on again. Very enjoyable conversation with you about Canada, about rugby, and it was great to chat. Coming up next, we'll be doing another local legend series. We have the Moncton Black Tide on. We have 4 representatives from the Black Tide, so that'll be that was a fun conversation the other night, and they've all got some great ideas about the state of game in province of New Brunswick and how to make it a little bit better in Moncton and getting more players out. And then following that, next week, the next pod after that will be Team Canada men's captain Kingsley Jones. Kingsley and I had a real great conversation about rugby, and you'll be looking forward to listening to that one as well. And then shortly after, we've been trying to nail down a date with the McKenzie brothers, Jamie and Phil, and they're interested in getting on and doing a brothers podcast, so that'll be fun. As always, I'd like to give a massive thank you to all the essential workers. So John falls into that category as a firefighter. My neighbor's a firefighter. One of my other neighbors is a police officer. So thank you to those that are continuing to work, and thanks to those who have started to go back to work. I was in the mall the other day just checking things out, and a lot of those stores are open with people working with their masks on and just being there to try and get the kickstart the economy again. So that's awesome that is happening. And I know in New Brunswick, knock on wood, we've fared a lot better than a lot of other places. It's kind of got like New Zealand and New Brunswick and then, other places around the world, but we've been doing really well. And a huge thanks to our medical advisor, to our government for keeping us safe here in New Brunswick. As always, thanks to Ben Sound Music for supplying us with some tunes. So as always, feel free to request topics for future podcasts. Look forward to hearing from listeners, whether you have thoughts on a guest or thoughts or questions, or just have some general topics or discussion ideas that you want to share. That's great. I love that. So until next time, as always, this is Jamie. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and keep on rocking.